The death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, looking back at the life of a feminist icon, plus what it all means for November. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Monday, September 21st. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Good morning, Carlo.
How was your weekend, Wags?
It was okay. How was yours?
Yeah, it was pretty chill, except for when I had to think about the news. It was nice and calm.
Yeah, and I want to start with the news that rocked the country Friday night. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the second woman to serve on the court and a liberal feminist icon. She died on Friday of pancreatic cancer. She was 87 years old. RBG, or the notorious RBG as she became known, was appointed in 1993 by Bill Clinton. That confirmation vote was 96-3. You'll probably never see that again. She was admired by colleagues and scholars on both sides of the aisle for her powerful dissents from the bench. Her family said that her dying wish was that she not be replaced, quote, until a new president is installed. Carlo, very few pieces of news shock me to my core. And I knew Ruth Bader Ginsburg obviously was sick and she was old.
Yeah.
But because we always see her working out and she hasn't, I think, ever missed a day of work. This one got me.
It was. I mean, I think I think a lot of people were hoping that she was going to hold out until November, and it's very weird to sort of talk about somebody's death in the context of politics and what it means for for anything other than just what it means for her and her family. And this is obviously a big loss just for the country. But this is when you have lifetime appointments to the Supreme Court, that's the ball game, right? So you said that her dying wish was that she not be replaced until a new president is installed. Republicans immediately moved to replace RBG before the election, which I think was pretty obvious that was going to be the play. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell released a statement just a little after 1 hour after her death was announced, in which he vowed that a Trump nominee would get a vote on the Senate floor this year. And remember, when Justice Antonin Scalia died in March of 2016, McConnell famously blocked President Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland, on the grounds that it was an election year. Just keep that in mind, of course. Not that it really matters, but again, just some pretty obvious hypocrisy there. President Trump says that he plans to put a nominee forth, quote, without delay. It's almost certainly going to be a woman. There's 2 or 3 appeals court justices, I believe, that he's thinking about. We'll probably get a better sense of that this week. So look, RBG's death has upended the presidential election. The question is, Jill, how, right? I don't think anybody knows what this means. And I think everyone in Washington this weekend was trying to figure out the answer to that question. Does it work in Trump's favor, right? Because A, it takes the focus off of COVID and onto the judiciary, which is where he would want it to be. And B, does it galvanize moderate Republicans who weren't really planning to vote for him? Maybe now they come out and they hold their nose to pull the lever for Trump because of the courts. Or on the flip side, does it help Joe Biden, right? Act Blue, which is the fundraising arm of the DNC, they raised $100 million since Friday night. That's astounding. That number. That's all grassroots donors, right? That's all people chipping in $25 or whatever. So what that suggests, at least to me, is that liberals and Democrats are fired up about this. And, it's usually Republicans that are fired up about issues of the judiciary. That may be different this time. And this is an election year that's going to hinge on turnout. So the question is, does this help Biden, who has a sort of, he has a problem with enthusiasm? Does this help fire up the Democratic base to come out? Does this work as sort of like a get out the vote operation, regardless of whether or not the Republicans are able to ram through a nominee in the next 4 or 5 weeks?
And also, will it matter? Because if they can ram through a nominee, the court is forever changed. I mean, you're basically talking about 6-3.
Right.
But in terms of where things stand right now, so you have 4 Republican senators would actually have to say that they wouldn't hold a confirmation vote before the election for the president's nominee to get stalled. 2 have said that. So Senator Lisa Murkowski and Senator Susan Collins. the latter of which is facing a tough re-election in November herself. They both said it would be hypocritical because of what happened back in 2016 for the Republicans to kind of ram through a nominee. Senator Lindsey Graham, who is also facing a tough re-election, runs the Judiciary Committee, and he had said multiple times that he would hold off on a confirmation in the run-up to an election. Now he says that he will advance the president's nominee immediately. Not only did he say, by the way, that he would hold off on a confirmation in the run-up to an election, he said, use these words against me. He literally said in 2016 or whatever it was, you can use these words against me if the tables are turned. But apparently that does not matter. So the question at this point really comes down to whether or not there are two other Republican senators who will say that they'll oppose a vote before November. Perhaps Mitt Romney is one of them. And there is some thinking here that the president might actually do this after the election, right? Like, so the election's in November, but inauguration isn't until the end of January.
So this is the thing that, because to me, when I was thinking about this Friday night, right, there's the issue of the lame duck Senate. If I'm Trump, I want to dangle the nomination until after the election, right, and use it as sort of like the the carrot to get people to come to the polls. And then if he loses, the Republicans still control the Senate for 2 months. Could they try and ram it through then? I mean, that would be outrageous and egregious. I don't know if that's ever would stop somebody like Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham. I don't think it would. These are like the two biggest hypocrites in America right now. But it seems like what they're trying to do is get this done before the election. And again, I'm just, if I'm Trump, I want to put it off, right? He doesn't really care. He just cares about winning. So wouldn't it be better for him to say, look, reelect me. First thing I do is fill RBG's seat. I don't know.
So he also has said he's going to nominate a woman, or that he's insinuated that he would. And I think that might make it harder for at least for some male Republicans to come out and oppose it. But the question going around Democratic circles is basically just how to respond, because whether or not they like it, the Senate does have the power to confirm a president's Supreme Court nominee. So the Senate is controlled by Republicans. So one idea that's being floated is Biden saying that if he does win and if he wins and also the Democrats take the Senate, they could get rid of that 60-vote threshold needed to confirm justices and then also expand the court by adding 2 new justices, because there's not anything written that says you have to have 9 justices.
Yeah, that's not in the Constitution. So it would just take an act, I believe an act of Congress, and then the president would have to sign off on it. And it's been done in the past, CourtPacking, right? You learn about it in high school. I think that it's very important for Joe Biden to explain what's at stake here for Democrats. And this was always going to be the case if Trump is reelected. Remember, I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was 87. She was, her seat was going to be filled soon. A 6-3 court, meaning 6 conservative justices, means the following things. It means Obamacare is toast, right? The pre-existing conditions coverage, that's immediately gone. They will overturn the ACA as the first order of business. I think it's a little bit less clear what happens with Roe v. Wade. I think there's a very significant chance that it is overturned and abortion becomes illegal in the majority of states. And that's not hyperbole. I mean, that's on the ballot. I mean, conservatives social conservatives who are pushing for this to happen, they say outright, like, this is about overturning Roe. A 6-3 conservative court, Jill, would be very pro-business. It would be anti-regulation. That would have the effect, essentially, of being anti-climate. So you wouldn't really make any climate progress through the judiciary probably for decades. That's what's at stake. And if you're far to the right, I think that sounds like heaven, right? But most of America isn't. Roe polls at something like 65%. The ACA, or Obamacare, is very popular. Climate is now considered a major concern for the majority of voters, both left and right. So I think to have a court that is that out of step with the populace, that's going to be a real problem. That's a real recipe for disaster, and that's sort of where we're headed.
Yeah, I mean, the court is supposed to be kind of this. Look, you have these court appointees, these nominees they're on the court for life. This is supposed to be like a non-political, this one branch that we kind of hold to a higher esteem. And I don't want to lose in all of this sight of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and all that she did in the fight for women's rights, gender equality. She herself faced tons of discrimination as a woman, as a Jew. As a woman personally, her story resonates. Obviously, we know all about the court cases that she argued in front of the Supreme Court. She was so smart. She would turn things around. She used a man as her client to fight for a gender equality argument, as opposed to using a woman. She also, by the way, so she got married when she was young, and she had kids, and she kind of put that first, and she studied and went to law school and did all of this while she had children, while she was raising them. And her husband actually had cancer when he was really, really young. And she was this glue that held it all together. She was like studying for him and prepping him for his work so that he didn't have to miss a beat. He was also a really well-known lawyer, raised her kids, went to law school. So when you talk about, how many hours are in the day, she's just an inspiration, I think, on so many levels.
And you mentioned that she was practicing Jew, and how about just her, her passing on not Passover, on Rosh Hashanah, right? Pretty astounding. But
it's very meaningful. It's a very meaningful time if somebody passes then. It's I don't know exactly everything about it, but it is very meaningful, and it's just heartbreaking, and it's kind of sad that we unfortunately had to go straight into politics because it was just such an incredible woman in terms of what she did.
Absolutely.
In other news, as the U.S. marks 200,000 deaths from COVID-19, epidemiologists are sounding the alarm that the country is headed in the wrong direction as winter approaches. The latest Johns Hopkins data has weekly case numbers rising by at least 10% in 31 states and holding steady in 15. The test positivity rate is rising in 25 states. So this all basically tracks with infection spread during Labor Day, just as they did over the July 4th and Memorial Day weekends.
Yeah, did you read James Hamblin, our buddy James Hamblin in The Atlantic? He wrote a really good piece this weekend called How We Survive the Winter.
Okay, so I saw that you were writing a note about this in the podcast last night, so I read it before I went to bed because I wanted to be able to have a discussion with you about it.
No, I just thought he did a really good job of sort of like, there's nothing really new in there, but just sort of like succinctly laying out where we are and, what are the things that we can do to make this winter not the disaster that it, could be, right?
Okay, so one piece of like news you could use from it, I mean, everything else was pretty much, unfortunately, stuff that we knew. And, short of lockdowns, which there's just not an appetite for anymore in this country, what can you do, right? You can wear masks, you could keep social distanced. I thought that it was pretty interesting. So he said, a shorter interaction is safer than a longer one because there's just a shorter window for the virus to enter your airways. And a respiratory virus is more likely to cause disease if you inhale higher doses of it. So if you do find yourself in a high-risk scenario, don't linger. And then he quotes someone who says that if you are near somebody who sneezes or coughs, right? So this is like a very real thing. Just say you happen to be in a supermarket or somewhere or at a social gathering and someone sneezes and coughs. What should you do? He says immediately exhale. Okay, to avoid inhaling those droplets or aerosols, and then purse your lips to make the exhaling last longer and turn your head fully away from the person and start walking. Good advice, I think. That's like news you can use. I just wanted to relay it because I thought about being in that scenario, and it's just like, do not breathe, close your eyes, and get the hell away from it.
Pray for the best. No, I mean, it's again, like, how great would it be if like these were the kinds of things that were told to us by, the government, like back in March, like something that simple, right? Exhale if somebody sneezes, purse your lips, walk away. Like that's a simple thing that you can do, just like wearing a mask. But yeah, read that article if you can today, people. It's The Atlantic. They keep all the COVID stuff out of the paywall, so it's free, but it's just a really good piece of like how we can hopefully get through this winter, which I really worry about, Jill. I really do.
Me too. All right, the federal government has now delayed the ban on TikTok downloads by 1 week, as it's looking like a deal for the social media app appears to be getting closer to being finalized. The latest iteration has Oracle and Walmart forming a partnership with TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance to create this new company called TikTok Global to be based in the U.S. There's still a lot of questions over the ownership structure and security issues. Remember, that's what this whole thing was supposed to be about to begin with, which would be keeping American user data out of China. Walmart back in the game, Carlo. Incredible.
God, this story is like, this is turning into like the Brexit of like tech news. It's like, just get it over with already. I guess the idea is, can this become an actual competitor to Facebook? And is that some sort of good that can come from this whole rigmarole? I don't think so, because I think Facebook is just too big and powerful, even though TikTok obviously has a very valuable asset. But I did want to mention, Jill, we were talking about watching TV over the weekend, which I did a fair amount of. Social Dilemma, this documentary on Netflix, I cannot recommend it highly enough. So many people had told me to watch it, and I finally got around to it last night, my wife and I. And if you're a listener of this podcast, it deals with a lot of the issues, Jill, that you and I have been talking about for going on like 2 years now. So I didn't necessarily learn anything from it, but it does a really phenomenal job of just explaining the big social networks, the business model, the way that these apps are designed to keep us on them. It's really, I cannot recommend it highly enough. This is one of those things that should be like mandatory viewing in middle schools. I think if you're a parent of a young child, and this is something that you worry about, it's just it's really quite good, and I just wanted to sort of shoehorn that in there today.
Is this one of these that you're going to watch and you're just not going to want to go on social media again?
Yes, it will. It will do that. It will, but that could be a good thing.
The only thing that I'll ever say about it, and by the way, I'm on social media, it's like, if a product is free, you are the product. My dad and I were driving the other day, and he said, how does Waze make its money? I'm just wondering. And I'm like, if a product is free, you are the product. They know when you left your house, when you came. Yep. My dad drives me to the city and picks me up, which is very sweet of him. So we chat all the time. And I was saying like that, just think about that. Anytime you use anything that's free.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
that's the model. You're the business model.
Exactly, and this documentary is essentially built on that exact premise, and it's just the voices in it are really good. But yeah, it will make you not want to go on social media, but it could be a good thing, like I said.
Okay, let's talk a little Emmys. Succession, Watchmen, and Schitt's Creek were the big winners at the Primetime Emmys that featured a mix of in-person and remote segments, no audience or red carpet, and went off mostly without incident or any big gaffes. Succession won for Best Drama. Schitt's Creek swept the Comedy Awards. Watchmen took Best Limited Series, and Zendaya made history as the youngest person to win Best Lead Actress in a Drama for her role in the HBO series Euphoria.
Did we ever talk about that show? Did you ever watch that show?
I didn't. I've never. No. Is it? No. Is it good?
I mean, if you have it's basically about like drug fueled teenagers. But so if you have like a young daughter, it may scare you off a little bit because you're like, oh God, this is what I have to look forward to. But it is a pretty good show, and she was actually quite good in it. So that was a nice win. Excuse me. It was a big night for HBO though, in their competition with Netflix. Though Netflix did not go home empty-handed. One of the things that was interesting about this, Schitt's Creek, that just showed how powerful Netflix is when it comes to surfacing content that isn't theirs, right? That they didn't make Schitt's Creek, but they got the rights to it, and once it went on Netflix, that's when people started to find it and pay attention to it, and now it's a big Emmy winner. So it's just really interesting how these platforms are able to to kind of highlight content that they didn't even make. But I didn't stay up for most of the Emmys, but I did catch some of it. It almost felt like with these, you almost want there to be like more gaffes, right? It's almost like
totally.
if we're all going by the seat of our pants here, like I almost want these shows to just sort of like blow everything up and be crazy.
Like be a crazy train wreck. Have a tech issue.
Right. Exactly. Everything is already a train wreck. Like let's at least let's not pretend like things are normal here, folks.
Nothing to see here. Anyway, I watched a little bit of it, Jimmy Kimmel, I watched his monologue on Twitter, by the way. Like, this is, I'm just in this crazy, bizarre thing, which is how I'm getting feeds of stuff. All right, so I thought he was so funny. Like, I was actually laughing out loud during his opening monologue.
I like
so he
Jimmy
says,
Kimmel.
the big question is, why would you have an award show in the middle of a pandemic? No, seriously, I am asking, why are we having an award show in the middle of a pandemic? And it was like, okay, totally.
Right.
I'm not obviously going to do his jokes well. He says, if you win, a guy will drive to your house and chuck an Emmy through your window.
Did you see, Jill? Did you see that they actually had people in hazmat suits coming to deliver the Emmys to the winners?
I didn't see that.
There's things on Twitter. I got to find it on Twitter. We can talk about it tomorrow. It's so funny. And they're like standing outside your door, and if you don't win, they just walk away. It's like it is unbelievable.
That's amazing. Oh my, yeah. That's really hysterical. Anyway, I thought he did great. He said, you know what they say, you can't have a virus without a host. Of course, him being the host of the Emmys. I thought it was I guess like a nice distraction from everything going on.
Yeah, you could use more of those.
Okay, everybody, we're going to end it there on this chilly New York City morning. That's what you need to know for Monday, September 21st.
Have a good day, guys.